I always try to be as honest with you guys as possible, even if it doesn't really equal more views or money for this channel, like sponsorships, for example. Like, I would love to get the bag, and get some money, but I try to be as honest with you guys as possible, and like sponsorships and advertising kind of gets in the way of that. But honesty is always at the forefront, right? I feel like without honesty, there is no channel. With that being said, I don't really care about any of these games. And I've been really thinking about looter shooters lately, especially with Wayfinder, which a lot of you guys aren't really into, and also with the First Descendant, which a lot of you guys, I got a lot of feedback about how you guys were excited about the First Descendant. But here comes that honesty that Magamo just can't avoid. I'll be honest with you, I just don't care. I don't care about the First Descendant, even though it does a lot of things right with blending Warframe and Destiny. But for the most part, I think for me, I really need something to just grab me and hold on, pause, for me to be excited about something. So in the midst of me trying to figure out why I wasn't personally super excited about First Descendant, even though I may still play it, I made a list of what I thought would be the perfect looter shooter in my eyes, right? What would be the looter shooter that got me super excited about playing it, in the same way I was on day one of Warframe or of day one of Destiny. Both of those games had some really good ideas, or day one Remnant, it's not a live service. You guys make Remnant a live service, but I made this list and I wanted you guys to tell me what you thought about some of the things I'm saying in this list, as far as this is what I think would be the perfect looter shooter. Okay. Some of it is crazy. I'm warning you before we get into this. Some of it is pie in the sky, weird craziness, so bear with me. And some of it, is kind of common sense. Okay, so let's run down the list. This is, in my eyes, the absolute perfect looter shooter. And this is what I would want, to get me excited about playing these games. Okay? Number one's real crazy. Brace for impact. No more guns. I really feel like Warframe had something going great with the whole space ninja thing, kunai and ninja and throwing stars and battle axes and getting up close in the enemy's face and really balancing those weapons for fun and excitement and spectacle. But I kind of feel like, once you pick up a rocket launcher, a lot of that like soul of the game gets lost for me. The rifles and stuff are cool, but I don't really feel like you're really always engaging with the enemy unless like the gunplay is really, really good, like great gunplay. And that's a pretty high bar. Melee, on the other hand, there's so much variation that could be done in Melee that I really feel like the next looter shooter, I'm calling it a looter shooter, but it's really just a looter. The next looter game I think I would be excited about would probably focus a lot more on Melee. And that's probably not going to happen. But man, Melee is a lot more cool. Now, I know Soulframe is doing that. And that's one reason I'm really interested in where they're going with that. Because that will be a Melee game with blocks and parries and dodges and that type of stuff. But I think dialing back the rocket launchers and just all type of crazy stuff would be something I would be a little bit more interested in. And the thing I've seen with Warframe especially is Melee is in such a weird spot versus guns that you have to make it overpowered, and then you have to make it not overpowered, and then you have to make it overpowered and not, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's so hard to balance Melee when you can pick up a rocket launcher. It's just difficult. Number two, I'm going to lose a lot of people on this one. Okay, here, brace for impact. Absolutely no grinding. Now, how do you have no grinding in a looter game? Because that just sounds crazy. Why would you even agree to something like that? Well, I think it's not through difficulty. I used to think that. I used to think, let's make the game as hard and grindy as possible, and we'll kind of deal with it from there, right? And you wouldn't have to grind because things would be hard to do, and it would be balanced that way. But actually, I don't even think that's it. I think the way you tone the grind down in a way that I would have fun is you just have a flat progression across the board, right? You just give the player a bunch of stuff to do, lay it out, and it doesn't get too much more difficult, but it's not too easy, and the devs just keep adding missions, keep adding variations slowly over time, so that the progression is more flat. Instead of what usually happens with these games is you have all this like new player content and grind and stuff to do when you first install the game. And the longer you have it installed, that heel of how quickly you get stuff tends to slow down, right? Especially with in-game. Because with in-game, you're super hard grinding a very specific thing. So the rate at which you're kind of accomplishing things slows way down. And I think, this might be crazy. I think you can kind of get achievements in a looter shooter a lot more paced out, even the more you play the game. Now, if you're playing for 2,000, 3,000 hours, of course, that's not going to happen. But the first 500, 600 hours, I may be crazy, but I think progression could be a little bit better. Now that brings me to generated loot. Now, I remember when, I don't remember what they're called, the random mods, and you guys are yelling at me. When the random mods came out for Warframe, where the stats on the mods would be randomly generated, a lot of people didn't like that because the thing with Warframe is that it has to be something that everybody can get, because Warframe is Pokemon. You got to catch all the loot. You literally are just putting things on your shelf in your ship, and the whole point for many people to play the game is to just make sure they get everything. Now, me personally, that's just not me anymore. So I'm actually more inclined towards loot that's a little bit more randomized and unique, and then just, really balancing that stuff very well, because it's much easier for the developers to add content if they can add layers of that content. Now, I get it. I get, stat grinding can sometimes not be the most fun thing in the world, but I do think the way you fix that is you're a little bit more creative with what those stats are, right? So more creative with those stats and those perks and those tweaks so that they're actually fun things to go after and they're balanced. I know this is crazy. But you get unique builds, unique stats, unique loadouts, and then you can experiment with more stuff that you play. And the way those things stack and come and go, you get good combinations, right? Versus the dev getting on and being like, well, there's this big update out and I got to make this sword, and everyone grinds the sword and it's very specific. And once you get the sword, there's nothing else to do in the game. That's kind of all I'm saying. So more generated loot. Another thing that goes with that generated loot, I used to always say in-game. You need in-game, but you don't really need in-game. You just need stuff to do that's different varying levels of difficulty, right? So there's some easier, kind of somewhat grindy stuff, and then there's some harder, more difficult stuff that you got to do. I'm pro raid. I hate that Warframe doesn't do that anymore. But I don't think you need an in-game. See, I'm evolving. I used to preach in-game all the time. I don't think you need in-game. I just think you just need stuff to do that's progressively more or less difficult, so people can have goals and stuff like that. Now, here's one that people may agree or not agree with: a freaking solid PvP. Now, across the board, I think about games, right? Destiny has an okay PvP, pretty solid, especially because, it's Bungie, they made Halo. Warframe has never had a solid PvP. But the thing is, I think a PvP could be so really good for a game. Now, I'm not talking about like Fortnite, where the PvP basically, do you guys remember Fortnite was a tower defense game? Probably not. So I'm not saying overshadow it, but I think if you really start and develop a good PvP and you really put resources into it, and it's something fun and interesting, that pulls people into not only does that pull people into the game, but it also gives people something to do when they're not grinding, and it loosens up the pressure for the developers to always have to release content. Like, you get these content droughts, but you don't have to worry about it too much if some people can go off and play a really nice PvP, and spend time there and be able to do things, right? So a solid PvP will help. Now, two more things, and these are kind of, okay. So the first one, more exploration. Right now, no games I could think of as far as like live service or loot games really have any focus on exploration. None at all. Anthem was supposed to have a heavy focus on exploration, but they completely threw it in the trash to just be like, a BioWare Destiny game. But I think a game that focuses on a world that's large and mysterious and slowly expands over time, where the developers are really like, hey, we're going to slowly expand our large open world. You know, there are going to be interesting things to find, interesting places to go, you know, a great atmosphere. You got different biomes. You know, I haven't really had that experience in looter games. You get a little bit more in MMOs, but even in MMOs, like the explorative element isn't really there because the world doesn't really expand as much. Now, the reason I added this one to the list is because things like Unreal Engine, if anyone makes a game in that, have pretty much dealt with the technical limitations of this world, where the world streams outward. So you're in one part of the world and then you walk to another part and you don't get a loading screen. You just kind of walk there and it loads in the background and then you can go there. So the technical limitations aren't as bad as they were like 10 years ago. So I'm hoping like someone comes with the like large world exploration. And okay, you guys are gonna disagree on this one. No fast travel, like I really want to have a world that I can explore and go places in. And you know, you can have mounts, you can have vehicles, like trains can take you places, or you know, different type of ways of, I guess that's fast travel, but no teleporting fast travel, because to me personally, it takes me out of the experience. I told you guys this is going to be crazy. You're going to disagree with a lot of this stuff. And the final thing is going to be controversial. So if you're still with me, I'm sorry. Monetization. All right. Now this is a weird one because I really thought about how excited people are for the First Descendant. And the First Descendant is a Nexon game. Which brings me to my point. I think the First Descendant does a lot of things that a lot of other games do well. Like, again, they chip things away from Destiny, they chip things away from The Division, they chip things away from Warframe. And they've done such a good job of that I think people are a little more willing to deal with the fact that it's a Nexon game, and the monetization is probably gonna bat you over the head. Like, it's coming. But I think people are more willing to deal with that. So with the monetization thing, I think one, my perfect game is a free-to-play game. Because if you're building a large world and a large player base, it helps to have that world populated, you know, by a healthy player base. But number two, I think I'm okay with aggressive cosmetic monetization, right? So I know people like to collect things. So when you make a cosmetic that costs a lot of money, people tend to push back on that. But if a very expensive cosmetic is funding a well-developed, continuously content added to free-to-play game, then I tend to think it's worth it in the end. And a lot of people are going to disagree with that, but I'm like, listen, dude, if someone wants to pay $100 for a skin, I think it's at the detriment of the game to push back against that because of a collectionist mentality. I told you guys, you're gonna lose me on that. But that's my perfect game. I don't know. You guys let me know. I definitely know that everyone's not gonna agree with this. But for me personally, like, I'm not really that excited about the games that are coming out. And I kind of still have this perfect game in my head. And until that comes out, I'm not super excited about these games. We'll see what comes out though, and we'll cover some things. I don't know. You guys let me know what you think. Later.